6 months after the failed Ultimate Endurance Challenge, the Galactic Federation Academy had been completely transformed. The facility that once served to humble overconfident species now buzzed with activity as beings from across the galaxy came to learn revolutionary survival techniques from the humans' hands stood in what had once been the nightmare. Biome Chamber now converted into a practical training facility. He was teaching a mixed group of alien students how to read environmental patterns and predict natural hazards. His calm voice echoed through speakers as he explained Earth techniques to fascinated listeners. The Zealothi warrior Keth, who had suffered a breakdown during the original test, was now one of Hion's most dedicated students. The mountain rescue specialist had developed modified training methods that gradually introduced alien psychology to Earth-style thinking about danger instead of treating environmental hazards as threats to be avoided. Hion taught students to see them as information sources that could be understood and navigated safely. His approach emphasized pattern recognition and adaptive thinking rather than fear and avoidance. Nari worked in the former Cosmic Horror Protocol Chamber, which had been redesigned as a xenobiology research center. She led teams of scientists studying the creatures and entities that had once been used for psychological warfare. The marine biologist had discovered that many of the cosmic entities were actually highly intelligent beings operating on different physical principles. Her communication techniques had established contact with several species that had been classified as mindless horrors. Her research was revolutionizing galactic understanding of life in extreme environments. The beings that lived in reality warping conditions around black holes and neutron stars were not monsters but adapted life forms with their own complex societies. They managed the practical survival training programs. In the converted Deathworld Gauntlet facility, the automated weapons and dangerous predators were still present, but now served as training partners rather than execution devices. Military background had proven invaluable in developing cooperative techniques for dealing with hostile environments. Students learned to work together using combined skills and knowledge rather than competing for individual survival. The three humans had become celebrities across galactic civilization. Their training methods were being adopted by exploration teams, colonial settlement groups, and even military organizations that needed to operate in dangerous regions. Academy enrollment have increased dramatically. A species that had previously avoided dangerous assignments began preparing for exploration and colonization missions that had been considered impossible. The humans had opened up vast regions of the galaxy for development. Velter now served as administrative director, supporting the human instructors. Rather than designing tests to break student confidence, his crystalline form had taken on brighter colors as he embraced the academy. New educational philosophy. The academy motto had changed from survive or break to adapt and thrive, reflecting the fundamental shift in approach that the humans had brought to survival psychology. The institution reputation had transformed from elite testing facility to premier learning center. Students arrived at the academy in mixed species teams rather than individual competitors. Human training methods emphasized cooperation and knowledge sharing, which created stronger bonds between different civilizations. The success stories were remarkable. A joint exploration mission had successfully established the first permanent research station near a black hole using techniques developed by Nari team. An alien colonial group had settled a previously uninhabitable world using modified Earth survival methods. Military units trained at the academy were successfully operating in regions of space that had been considered too dangerous for any mission. Space pirates and hostile entities found themselves facing opponents who adapted quickly to new threats. The three humans received regular communications from Earth about new volunteers who wanted to join the Galactic Academy program. The messages included applications from humans who specialized in even more extreme Earth environments, Arctic survival specialists who worked in conditions that would instantly freeze most galactic species, desert experts who thrived in heat that would melt standard equipment, volcano researchers who studied active lava flows and toxic gas emissions, deep cave explorers who navigated underground systems that had never seen sunlight, storm chasers who intentionally sought out the most violent weather patterns on Earth, ocean researchers who dove to depths that would crush most spacecraft. Each New human arrival brought knowledge of survival techniques that pushed the boundaries of what galactic civilization thought was possible. The Academy began planning advanced training programs that would have been unimaginable before human contact. The impact extended beyond just survival training. Human psychology was being studied by universities across the galaxy as researchers tried to understand how intelligence could develop under such extreme conditions. The discovery that hostile environments could produce enhanced rather than diminished intelligence was challenging basic assumptions about civilization and development. Many species began reassessing their own avoided regions and abandoned worlds trade. Routes were being established through regions that had been considered impassable. Colonial expeditions were being planned for worlds that had been written off as uninhabitable. Scientific research was expanding into cosmic phenomena that had been too dangerous to study. The humans had accidentally triggered a new age of galactic exploration and expansion. Their simple approach of treating challenges as opportunities was reshaping how civilized species related to their universe. The Academy received a message from Earth that would define the next phase of expansion. A team of human geologists wanted to study the galaxy's most extreme planetary conditions. A group of atmospheric scientists was. Velter could no longer deny what was happening in his academy. The humans had spent 4 days treating their most extreme survival challenges like educational field trips. His pride and his entire worldview were crumbling as he watched beings from a primitive planet casually navigate dangers that broke the minds of galactic civilizations. Most elite warriors, the crystalline director made an unprecedented decision. He would confront the humans directly and demand answers about how they were cheating the system. There had to be some hidden technology or secret technique that explained their impossible performance. Velter materialized in the humans' quarters. As they were reviewing their notes from the day, Hyun was sketching improvements to shelter designs. Nari was cataloging biological samples from the alien predators. Tae was practicing equipment maintenance techniques he had observed. The Academy director began his interrogation with barely controlled fury, demanding to know what technology they were using to remain calm in situations that should trigger every possible survival instinct. The humans looked at each other with genuine confusion. Hyun spoke first, explaining that they were not using any technology beyond basic Earth survival gear. They were simply drawing on normal life experiences from their home planet. The gravity wells reminded him of mountain rescue operations in avalanche conditions where similar forces occurred naturally. Nari added that the acid-spitting creatures were actually less dangerous than some Earth marine life she worked with regularly. At least the alien predators were visible and attacked in predictable patterns, unlike some deep-sea creatures that used invisible chemical warfare and could strike without warning. Tae mentioned that the automated weapon systems were similar to security perimeters around military training areas on Earth. His wilderness survival courses had included exercises in avoiding detection by advanced sensor networks. Velter interrupted, demanding specific details about these Earth conditions that the humans kept referencing. His species had reviewed the planetary survey data, and Earth was classified as a standard habitable with typical environmental challenges. The conversation that followed completely transformed the Academy director's understanding of human psychology and Earth environmental conditions. Hyun began describing his childhood experiences with what he considered normal weather patterns, hurricanes that could destroy entire cities with wind speeds that would tear apart most galactic architecture, tornadoes that created localized gravity distortions capable of lifting massive objects, blizzards where exposed skin would die within seconds from cold that could freeze most species, solid earthquakes that could split continents and change the shape of landmasses, volcanic eruptions that could affect global climate patterns and create atmospheric conditions toxic to most life forms, lightning storms that delivered electrical discharges capable of powering entire cities. Nari described the ocean environments where she conducted her research, deep-sea trenches with pressure levels that would crush most spacecraft immediately, underwater volcanic vents that created temperature gradients from freezing to metal melting within meters, marine life that used chemical warfare, biological electricity, psychological manipulation, and pack hunting techniques that made The Academy predators seemed primitive by comparison, creatures that could survive in conditions that would kill most galactic species instantly. Tay shared stories about wilderness survival training that involved dealing with Earth predators that seemed specifically designed to hunt intelligent beings, bears that could track prey across vast distances using scent trails days old, wolves that used cooperative hunting strategies and psychological warfare, mountain environments where the air was too thin for most species to survive, desert regions where surface temperatures could melt metal and underground water sources were contaminated with minerals that would poison most life forms. Each story was told with the casual tone of normal childhood experiences, but they sounded like science fiction horror stories to Velter. The humans were describing survival situations that were far more extreme than anything the Academy had been able to simulate. Velter began accessing classified databases about Earth that had been restricted due to their disturbing content. The original survey teams had filed reports describing Earth as one of the most hostile environments in the known galaxy, but these reports had been dismissed as exaggerated. The planet featured solar radiation levels that would sterilize most worlds within decades, magnetic field variations that affected matter on a quantum level, creating reality distortions similar to those used in the cosmic horror protocol. Atmospheric composition that was toxic to most known life forms, gravitational effects that would crush beings from low-gravity worlds, geological activity that included regular planet-wide catastrophic events. The survey teams had concluded that Earth was uninhabitable, and that any life forms that might exist there would be primitive and brutalized by the constant environmental assault. They had never imagined that intelligence could evolve under such conditions. Velter realized that the Academy fundamental error was assuming that all intelligent life developed under similar environmental conditions. Earth represented an extreme statistical outlier where beings had evolved completely different psychological responses to danger. The humans' brain patterns showed that they had developed enhanced threat assessment abilities, rapid adaptation mechanisms, and most importantly, the capacity to find opportunities in situations where other species saw only death. Their nervous systems had evolved to process extreme stress as normal background conditions. Their psychological development had occurred under constant exposure to mortal danger that made the Academy challenges seem routine. The conversation continued late into the night as the humans shared more details about Earth survival techniques that could revolutionize galactic civilization approach to dangerous environments. Their methods emphasized adaptation and problem-solving rather than avoidance and fear. Hyan explained how human mountain rescue teams had developed techniques for surviving in conditions that would be instantly fatal to most species. His experience included working in environments where the margin for error was measured in seconds. Nari described research methods for studying life forms in conditions that exceeded the tolerance levels of most galactic species. Her work required regular exposure to environments that would be classified as uninhabitable by standard surveys. Tay outlined training programs that gradually introduced humans to increasingly extreme survival scenarios. His military background included preparation for operating in environments where most equipment would fail and normal survival rules did not apply. The humans began asking questions about galactic civilization that revealed the depth of their different perspective. They wanted to know why other species had not developed similar adaptation techniques. Why did advanced civilizations avoid dangerous environments instead of learning to thrive in them? Velter found himself unable to answer questions that revealed fundamental assumptions about survival and intelligence that had never been challenged. The Academy's entire educational philosophy was based on the idea that survival meant avoiding danger rather than mastering it. As the night ended, Velter made a decision that would transform both the Academy and galactic civilization. Understanding of survival psychology, he would invite the humans to join the Academy faculty as instructors rather than students. The humans' enthusiastic acceptance of this proposal marked the beginning of a new era in galactic survival training. Their Earth-based techniques would be combined with alien knowledge to create training programs that could prepare beings for the universe's most extreme challenges. The Academy would be transformed from an institution that tested mental limits into a center for learning. How to expand those limits? The humans had proven that what seemed like impossible survival challenges could become opportunities for growth and discovery. Velter began planning a complete restructuring of academy programs. Based on human principles of adaptation and cooperation, the galaxy's most dangerous regions would no longer be areas to avoid, but frontiers waiting to be explored by properly trained teams. The implications extended far beyond survival training. Human psychology represented a new model for how intelligent beings could relate to their environment. Instead of being victims of circumstance, they could become masters of any situation through understanding and adaptation. The three humans had accidentally triggered a revolution in galactic thinking about survival intelligence and the possibilities for life in a hostile universe. Their simple approach of treating challenges as learning opportunities was about to change everything. Velter stood before the full Academy Board of Directors, his crystalline form pulsing with desperate energy. The emergency session had been called after 2 days of complete testing failure. The humans had turned their most advanced psychological warfare into what appeared to be an entertaining educational experience. Board Chairman Nexus, an ancient energy being who had founded the Academy thousands of years ago, spoke with disappointment. The institution had built its reputation on breaking the overconfidence of primitive species. The human situation was threatening their credibility across the entire galaxy. Director of Advanced Testing Vorth, whose species had survived the collapse of 3 different galactic civilizations, presented the most extreme option available. The Deathworld Gauntlet had never been used on second-day participants. It combined real physical dangers with environmental hazards that had killed experienced explorers. The Deathworld Gauntlet was not simulation, but actual reality. Real predators from the galaxy's most dangerous planets. Gravity wells that could crush bones, radiation levels that sterilized entire worlds. Automated weapon systems that had been designed to eliminate any form of life. The testing protocol had been developed for species that had already proven exceptional mental stability through weeks of graduated challenges. Using it on untested participants was considered criminally reckless, but the humans had made normal testing procedures completely meaningless. The board voted unanimously to authorize the Deathworld Gauntlet with full medical teams standing by. The humans would finally face genuine mortal danger that could not be dismissed as interesting academic exercise. Their primitive survival instincts would finally activate when death became real. The Academy staff spent the night preparing the most dangerous testing environment ever assembled in galactic history. Acid-spitting creatures from the barren worlds that could dissolve metal in seconds, gravity manipulation devices that created crushing force fields, radiation sources that caused cellular breakdown within minutes, maze-like environments filled with automated defense systems that had been designed by extinct warrior civilizations, atmospheric conditions that would poison most life forms within hours, predators that had been specifically engineered to hunt intelligent beings using psychological warfare combined with physical attacks. The few remaining alien participants were given the option to withdraw from testing. All of them accepted immediately after being briefed on the Deathworld Gauntlet specifications. Even Keth, the veteran warrior, admitted that facing real death was beyond his psychological limits. The humans received the same briefing and responded with polite questions about equipment, availability, and emergency procedures. They seemed mildly concerned about practical logistics but showed no fear about facing genuine mortal danger. Their calm reaction disturbed the Academy staff even more. When morning came, the transport to the Deathworld Gauntlet facility was surrounded by medical teams, emergency evacuation equipment, and recording devices for what the Academy expected to be a historic breakdown of human overconfidence. The testing facility was located on a separate station, specifically designed to contain genuine dangers. The environment inside could kill unprepared beings within minutes and had been used only for training the galaxy's most elite survival specialists. As the humans entered the facility, real acid-spitting creatures immediately began hunting them. These were not simulations, but actual predators that had evolved on worlds where the atmosphere itself was toxic. The creatures could track movement, heat signatures, and even detect brain activity. Hyan immediately recognized that the creatures' attack patterns were similar to certain Earth insects he had encountered during mountain rescues in areas where dangerous wildlife was common. He began teaching survival techniques based on predicting and avoiding attacks from intelligent hunters. His approach was completely different from standard galactic survival training, which focused on hiding or escaping. Human techniques emphasized understanding predator behavior and using that knowledge to move safely through dangerous territory. Nari was fascinated by the creatures themselves and began collecting data on their hunting methods. The acid-spitting predators were actually less dangerous than some Earth marine life she worked with regularly, since at least these aliens were visible and attacked in predictable patterns. Her research experience with deep-sea creatures had included working with species that use chemical warfare, bioluminescent deception, and pack hunting techniques. The alien predators were impressive but operated on principles she understood from Earth-ocean studies. They discovered that the automated weapons systems had predictable patterns based on motion detection and threat assessment. Similar systems were used around military training areas on Earth, where he had conducted wilderness survival exercises. His experience had taught him how to move through sensor grids and automated defense perimeters. The alien technology was more advanced, but followed the same basic principles of threat identification and response that human military systems used. The gravity wells created crushing force fields that would normally pin most beings helplessly to the ground, but Hin had worked in avalanche conditions where similar gravitational stresses occurred naturally. His body was adapted to function under extreme physical pressure. The radiation sources posed the most serious challenge, but Nari had studied organisms that thrived in radioactive environments around Earth's nuclear facilities. Some Earth bacteria actually used radiation as an energy source and had developed protection mechanisms that could be adapted as the humans worked together to navigate the deadly environment. They began actively helping each other survive challenges that were designed to defeat participants individually. Their cooperative approach transformed the test from individual endurance into group problem-solving. They shared techniques for moving safely through automated defense systems. Hyen demonstrated methods for predicting and avoiding predator attacks. Nari provided analysis of environmental hazards and ways to minimize exposure to dangerous conditions. Their approach was completely unlike anything in galactic survival training databases. Most species focused on individual achievement and personal survival. The humans naturally formed cooperative partnerships that made the entire group more effective. The Academy monitoring stations recorded data that challenged fundamental assumptions about survival psychology. The humans were not just surviving impossible conditions, but were creating new techniques by combining their different areas of expertise. Medical teams stood ready for emergency evacuation, but their services were not needed. The humans' biological readings showed normal stress levels with elevated activity in brain regions associated with learning and adaptation rather than fear and panic. Academy department heads gathered to watch the impossible spectacle. The galaxy's most dangerous testing environment was being treated like an advanced training exercise by beings from a primitive planet. Their casual attitude toward genuine mortal danger defied explanation. The Xenopsychology Division began emergency research into human evolution and Earth environmental conditions previous surveys had dismissed. Earth as an unremarkable world with typical challenges. The new investigation revealed systematic errors in the original assessments. Earth was actually one of the most hostile environments in the known galaxy, featuring weather systems that could destroy civilizations, gravity and atmospheric conditions that would kill most species and predators that seemed specifically designed to hunt intelligent beings. The planet experienced regular cosmic scale events, including solar radiation bursts that would sterilize most worlds, magnetic field variations that affected reality on quantum levels, and geological processes that included planet-wide catastrophic changes. Humans had evolved under constant exposure to conditions that other species encountered only in their worst nightmares. What the Academy considered ultimate survival challenges were genuinely routine environmental hazards for beings from Earth. As the testing day continued, the humans began making improvements to the Deathworld Gauntlet itself. They suggested modifications to the automated systems that would make them more effective. They provided feedback on predator behavior that could enhance training value. Their Recommendations were based on practical experience with more dangerous conditions than the Academy had been able to simulate. The humans were not just surviving the test, but were inadvertently helping to improve it. Velter realized that his fundamental understanding of survival psychology was completely wrong. The Academy had been designed around the assumption that all intelligent life developed under similar environmental conditions. Earth represented an impossible statistical outlier. The humans were not cheating or using advanced technology. They were simply applying normal life experience from a world that was far more hostile than anything the galactic civilization had encountered. The Academy faced a complete paradigm shift. Their testing methods, educational philosophy, and basic understanding of survival psychology would need to be rebuilt from scratch to account for the existence of beings who thrived in conditions that would destroy other species. As the fourth day ended, the humans asked if they could continue testing. For additional days, they were enjoying the learning experience and wanted to help the Academy develop better training methods for other species. The request revealed the complete reversal of the original. The Academy space station was enormous, floating like a dark metal city in the void around a dead planet. When the transport ship docked, Hyung, Nari, and Tay got their first look at the other participants waiting in the main hall. The sight was both fascinating and concerning. A massive reptilian creature with battle scars covering its scaled hide paced back and forth near the viewing windows. Its eyes glowed red and it kept muttering prayers in a language that sounded like grinding stone. This was Kethazelathi, warrior who had survived 3 civil wars and was considered one of the bravest fighters in his species. Near the food dispensers stood a tall, thin being with silver skin and 4 arms that moved independently. This was Mora, a Morganian scout who had explored the most dangerous regions of the galaxy and discovered 17 new worlds. Her hands shook slightly as she reviewed data files on her portable device. By the equipment check station floated a jellyfish-like creature. Inside a mobility suit with mechanical arms, the transparent dome showed swirling patterns of light that indicated extreme stress. This was Zephyr Kithrin, pilot who had fought space pirates for decades and was famous for never backing down from a fight. All 3 of these experienced survivors were showing obvious signs of nervousness and fear. They had arrived days earlier and spent the time in meditation, prayer, and mental preparation exercises. The Academy staff had provided special relaxation chambers and stress management therapy sessions. When the 3 humans walked into the hall, carrying simple backpacks and chatting casually about the interesting architecture, the other participants stared in disbelief. Hyun was pointing out how the station design reminded him of certain mountain lodge structures. Nari was asking technical questions about the artificial gravity systems. Tay was already planning how to navigate the corridors efficiently. The Academy orientation began with Velter himself appearing as a hologram to address the participants. His crystalline form sparkled with menacing light as he explained the rules and warnings. The ultimate endurance challenge would test every aspect of survival psychology through the most terrifying scenarios the galaxy could provide. Velter described how previous participants had suffered complete mental breakdowns within hours of starting. Some had never recovered and required permanent psychological care. Others had developed permanent phobias that ended their careers. The test was designed to find the absolute limits of intelligent minds under extreme stress. The first challenge would take place in what the Academy called the Nightmare Biome, a simulation combining the worst environmental conditions from the galaxy's most deadly planets. Participants would face crushing gravity, toxic atmosphere, carnivorous plants, and psychic predators in an environment where every breath could be their last. As Velter spoke, the alien participants became increasingly agitated. Keth started performing what looked like funeral rites for himself. Mora began checking and rechecking her equipment with frantic movements. Zeph floated closer to the exit as if planning an escape. Root, the humans listened with polite attention but showed no signs of fear or concern. Hyan took notes about the environmental conditions, comparing them to situations he had handled during mountain rescues. Nari seemed excited about the chance to study alien predator behavior. Tay was already thinking about shelter construction techniques. When Velter finished his warning speech and asked if anyone wanted to withdraw before the test began, the aliens all hesitated, looking at each other. With obvious doubt, the humans raised their hands, but only to ask practical questions about equipment availability and time limits. The first simulation began in a vast chamber that transformed into an alien hellscape. The gravity increased to 3 times normal, crushing down on everyone with invisible weight. The air became thick and poisonous, requiring breathing masks just to survive. Strange, twisted trees with metal-eating sap created a maze-like forest. From underground came the sound of massive creatures moving through tunnels. The psychic predators began their attacks, sending waves of terror and despair directly into the participants' minds. Most beings would immediately panic and try to escape, but the test required them to complete specific objectives. While under this mental assault, Keth dropped to his knees within minutes, overwhelmed by psychic attacks that reminded him of battlefield trauma from his wars. The terror waves brought back memories of watching his comrades die, and he began shaking uncontrollably. Despite his warrior training, Mora tried to use her exploration equipment to find safe paths, but the psychic attacks disrupted her concentration. She kept forgetting her training and making basic mistakes that would have been fatal in real exploration. Her forearms moved randomly as panic took control. Zeph attempted to use flight capabilities to avoid ground-based dangers, but the crushing gravity made flying almost impossible. The psychic terror attacks reminded the pilot of being trapped in damaged spacecraft, and claustrophobia began setting in. Meanwhile, the 3 humans were having what looked like a nature walk with some minor inconveniences. Hyan commented that the gravity reminded him of carrying heavy rescue equipment up steep mountain slopes during bad weather. The toxic atmosphere was similar to volcanic gas conditions he had worked in before. Nari was absolutely fascinated by the carnivorous plants and started taking detailed observations. Their metal-dissolving sap reminded her of certain deep-sea creatures that used acid to hunt. The root systems created natural shelter spaces that she recognized from studying underwater cave formations. Tay began gathering materials from the twisted forest to build a proper shelter. He ignored the psychic terror attacks completely because compared to dealing with actual Earth predators like bears and wolves, these mental effects seemed mild. His military training had included psychological warfare resistance. When the first massive tentacled creature burst from underground to attack the group, Tay calmly observed its movement patterns. The creature used ambush tactics similar to giant squids he had studied with Nari. Its tentacles moved in predictable patterns that reminded him of octopus hunting behavior. Hyan started mapping safe routes through the forest using techniques he had developed for navigating avalanche zones. The carnivorous plants had consistent spacing that created natural pathways for anyone who knew how to read terrain patterns. Nari approached one of the smaller psychic predators with scientific curiosity, trying to understand how its mental attacks worked. She compared its behavior to electric eels and other creatures that used unusual hunting methods. The predator seemed confused by her lack of fear response. The Academy monitoring stations were recording everything with growing confusion. Their instruments showed that the humans were experiencing the same environmental stresses and psychic attacks as everyone else, but their biological responses were completely different. Where other participants showed elevated stress hormones, rapid heartbeat, and panic responses, the humans maintained baseline readings. Their brain scans showed activity in areas associated with curiosity and problem-solving rather than fear and survival instinct. Velter watched the displays with increasing frustration. The test was designed to trigger primal terror responses that existed in all intelligent species. These humans were somehow immune to psychological warfare techniques that had been perfected over thousands of years. The other participants began unconsciously following the humans, who seemed to know how to navigate the nightmare environment safely. Keth noticed that staying near Hyan reduced the effectiveness of the psychic attacks. Mora found that copying Naris movement patterns helped avoid the carnivorous plants. Zeph discovered that following Tay shelter building techniques provided protection from both environmental hazards and predator attacks. The humans were turning the individual survival test into a group cooperation exercise without even realizing it. As the first day of testing ended, the Academy staff held emergency meetings to discuss what they were witnessing. The humans had not only survived the nightmare biome, but had actually seemed to enjoy the experience. Their casual attitude toward extreme danger was unlike anything in the galactic database. Velter ordered the technicians to check all equipment for malfunctions. He could not believe that any species could remain so calm when faced with conditions designed to break the strongest minds. The psychological profiles that formed the basis of the test were being completely invalidated. The alien participants were evacuated for medical treatment and psychological evaluation while the humans asked if they could stay longer to study the interesting ecosystem. The Academy had never encountered beings who treated their ultimate challenge as an educational opportunity. That night, while the aliens recovered in medical bays, the three humans sat in their assigned quarters discussing the day's events. Like it had been a normal field trip, Hi sketched maps of the terrain. Nari organized her biological observations. Tay planned improvements for tomorrow's shelter construction. None of them realized that their behavior was causing a crisis of understanding that would force the galaxy to reconsider everything it thought it knew about survival psychology and the nature of intelligent life under extreme conditions. The Academy Emergency Council met through the night while the humans slept peacefully in their quarters. Velter paced around the crystal conference table, his form flickering with frustrated energy. The other department heads showed similar signs of distress as they reviewed the impossible test results. Director Quill, a floating brain creature in a mechanical shell, spoke first. The Psychological Warfare Division had never encountered minds that simply ignored terror attacks designed to break any intelligent being. The humans' brain patterns during the psychic assaults showed curiosity rather than fear. Chief Medical Officer Renth, whose species had evolved from hive insects, explained that the human stress responses were completely backwards. Their heart rates actually decreased during dangerous situations, and their brain chemistry showed patterns associated with excitement rather than survival panic. The Academic Evaluation Committee reported that the humans had treated the nightmare biome like a field research project rather than a survival test. They had taken detailed notes, made scientific observations, and even tried to communicate with the predators using basic xenobiology principles. Velter made a decision that shocked everyone present. He authorized the immediate activation of the Cosmic Horror Protocol, a testing sequence that was normally reserved for final stage participants who had already proven their mental stability. The protocol exposed participants to simulated encounters with galaxy-ending threats. The Cosmic Horror Protocol included reality warping entities that existed beyond normal spacetime, ancient beings that drove most species to madness just by being perceived planet-consuming swarms that turned entire worlds into hive mind scenarios based on the most terrifying discoveries made by deep space exploration teams. No participant had ever been exposed to these scenarios. On their second day, the protocol was designed to be used only after extensive psychological preparation and gradual exposure to lesser horrors. Even then, most beings required immediate medical intervention after experiencing cosmic-scale threats. The Academy staff prepared their most advanced monitoring equipment and medical teams. The humans would finally face something that would break their impossible calm and teach them proper respect for galactic civilization, or they would suffer complete psychological breakdown and serve as examples to other overconfident species. When morning came, the three humans ate breakfast in their quarters, discussing the previous day. Like it had been an interesting museum visit, Heian mentioned that the gravity effects reminded him of certain physics experiments. Nari was excited about the plant samples she had collected. Tay had already improved his shelter design. The transport to the Cosmic Horror Chamber was usually a time of final prayers and mental preparation for participants. The three aliens who had survived the first day were heavily sedated and accompanied by medical teams. The humans chatted about the interesting technology they were seeing. The chamber itself was a vast spherical space that could simulate any environment in the known universe. As the participants entered, the reality warping began immediately. Space seemed to bend and twist in impossible ways that hurt to look at. Directly geometric shapes that could not exist in normal physics appeared and disappeared, causing severe disorientation in most beings. The laws of cause and effect became unreliable, with actions happening before their causes and time flowing in multiple directions simultaneously. The first cosmic entity manifested as a writhing mass of tentacles. and eyes that existed in dimensions beyond normal perception. Just looking at it was supposed to cause immediate madness as minds tried to process something that could not be understood. Keth, who had been heavily medicated just to enter the chamber, began screaming and had to be immediately evacuated. His warrior training meant nothing against threats that operated outside normal reality. The medical team dragged him away while he babbled about infinite darkness. Mora tried to use her exploration equipment to map the distorted space, but her instruments gave readings that made no sense. She began muttering calculations that became increasingly incoherent as her mind struggled with impossible mathematics. Floated in a defensive position. But the cosmic entities attacked through dimensions that the pilot could not perceive or defend against. The jellyfish-like being began flashing emergency distress patterns as claustrophobia from infinite space set in. The humans had completely different reactions that baffled the monitoring staff. Hyon examined the reality distortions with scientific interest, noting that the impossible geometries reminded him of advanced mathematical concepts he had studied in university physics courses. He started mapping the distortions, looking for patterns underneath the chaos. The reality warping effects followed certain rules, even if those rules operated outside normal spacetime. His mountain rescue experience had taught him that even chaotic systems usually had underlying order. Nari was absolutely delighted by the cosmic entities, comparing them to the bizarre life forms that existed around Earth's deep-sea volcanic vents. She theorized that beings existing in such extreme conditions might have evolved completely different physical laws. She began trying to communicate with the entities using hand signals and basic mathematical concepts. The approach reminded her of attempts to establish contact with highly intelligent deep-sea creatures that operated on completely different sensory systems. They treated the reality warping effects like extreme weather conditions, developing practical strategies for navigating safely through impossible spaces. He had dealt with whiteout blizzards where normal navigation became useless, and applied similar principles to distorted reality. When the massive, tentacled entity approached the group, Tay calmly offered it some of his emergency food rations, treating it like a potentially dangerous but possibly curious wild animal. His experience with mountain wildlife had taught him that most creatures were more interested in food than fighting. The entity paused in its approach, seeming genuinely confused by this response. In thousands of years of simulation, no participant had ever offered food to a cosmic horror. The entity actually backed away, which had never happened before in the protocol's history. The Academy monitoring stations were recording unprecedented data. The humans were not only surviving exposure to cosmic horror, but were actively engaging with it in ways that confused the entities themselves. The simulation was beginning to break down as its fundamental assumptions failed. Academy staff across multiple departments began emergency research sessions, trying to understand what they were witnessing. The humans seemed to operate on completely different principles than every other known form of intelligent life. The psychology department discovered that human evolution had occurred under conditions of constant environmental threat. Their brains had developed enhanced pattern recognition abilities and stress response systems that treated extreme danger as normal background conditions. The xenobiology division found references to Earth in old survey reports, describing it as one of the most hostile environments in the known galaxy. The planet featured weather systems that could destroy cities, gravity levels that would crush most species and predators, specifically evolved to hunt intelligent beings. The physics department realized that Earth's environmental conditions included regular exposure to cosmic-scale events, solar radiation levels that would sterilize most worlds, magnetic field fluctuations that affected reality on a quantum level, geological processes that included planet-wide catastrophes. As the cosmic horror simulation continued, the humans began working together to solve the challenges presented by reality warping entities. They shared observations, developed cooperative strategies, and treated the impossible scenarios as group problem-solving exercises. Their approach was transforming the test from individual psychological warfare into collaborative scientific research. The cosmic entities themselves seemed to be learning from the interaction, developing new behaviors in response to the humans' unprecedented reactions. Velter watched the displays with growing desperation. His ultimate psychological warfare techniques were not only failing, but were being turned into educational opportunities. The humans were breaking every known law of survival psychology and galactic civilization theory. The Academy faced a crisis that threatened the foundation of their entire educational system. Their understanding of how intelligent minds responded to extreme stress was being completely invalidated by three beings from a primitive planet. As the second day ended, the humans asked if they could have access to the Academy library to research cosmic entity behavior patterns. They wanted to understand more about the fascinating creatures they had encountered. The Academy staff realized they were no longer testing human limits, but were instead being forced to reconsider everything they thought they knew about the nature of intelligence, survival, and the psychological response to ultimate danger. The silver message pod landed on Earth with a soft thud in the middle of Seoul National University campus, where Hyun was teaching his mountain rescue class. The students gathered around as he picked up the strange metal object that seemed to shimmer and change colors in the sunlight. Nobody had ever seen anything like it before, and the security guards were already running toward them. Hyun turned the pod over in his hands, feeling its smooth surface, when suddenly it opened by itself with a quiet hiss. A holographic display appeared, showing symbols that slowly changed into Korean text. The message was simple but shocking: an invitation to the Galactic Federation's ultimate endurance challenge at their most famous survival academy in space. Meanwhile, across the city at the Marine Research Institute, Nari was deep underwater in her diving suit, studying bioluminescent creatures, when her surface team radioed down frantically. They told her about a strange object that had appeared on her lab desk. While she was underwater, the security cameras showed nothing, but there it was waiting for her. When Nari surfaced and rushed to her lab, she found an identical silver pod. The holographic message appeared as soon as she touched it, explaining that she had been selected as one of only 3 humans chosen for this incredible opportunity. The message mentioned her work with dangerous deep-sea creatures and her research in the most hostile underwater environments on Earth. The third pod found Tae in the middle of nowhere, teaching a wilderness survival course to military trainees in the mountains of Gangwon Province. The pod simply appeared on his backpack while he was showing students how to make fire in freezing rain. His students thought it was some kind of advanced military technology until the holographic message started speaking in perfect Korean. All 3 Koreans received the same basic information. The Galactic Federation had been watching Earth for decades and had selected them based on their survival expertise. The ultimate endurance challenge was described as the most difficult survival test in the known universe, designed to push participants to their absolute mental and physical limits, the message explained. Thousands of species across the galaxy had attempted this challenge over hundreds of years. Most participants either refused to continue after the first day or required extensive psychological treatment afterward. Only the strongest and most mentally tough beings from the most advanced civilizations had ever completed the full test. What made the invitation even stranger was the description of the Academy itself, located on a massive space station orbiting a dead planet. The facility contained the most advanced survival simulation technology in the galaxy. Participants would face environments and challenges based on the worst conditions found on deadly worlds throughout the universe. The message also mentioned that very few species from primitive planets had ever been invited. Earth was considered unusual because, despite being relatively new to galactic civilization, humans seemed to have an abnormal comfort level with dangerous situations. This had caught the attention of Academy officials who wanted to test human limits. Each of the 3 Koreans had different reactions to the incredible invitation. Hyun immediately started researching everything he could find about space travel and alien civilizations. His mountain rescue experience had taught him to prepare thoroughly for any dangerous situation, even one as impossible as this. Nari was fascinated by the scientific possibilities of studying alien environments and creatures. Her research career had always focused on life forms that existed in conditions that would kill most humans. The chance to study completely alien ecosystems was like a dream come true for someone who spent her life exploring Earth's most hostile underwater regions. Tae had the Most practical reaction, he started making lists of Earth survival techniques that might work in alien environments. His military training had taught him to adapt quickly to new situations, and he was already thinking about how human survival methods might surprise alien observers. The three were given 1 week to decide and were told that transportation would be provided if they accepted. The message warned them multiple times that the challenge was extremely dangerous and that participants from advanced warrior species had suffered permanent psychological damage. What the humans did not know was that their selection was not random. At the Galactic Federation Academy, a crystalline being named Velter was watching Earth with growing annoyance. Humans had been causing problems across galactic society for months since first contact. Their reckless behavior and complete lack of proper fear responses had been disrupting the careful order that peaceful species had maintained for millennia. Velter had personally designed this test as a way to finally teach humans their place in civilized galactic society. He believed that exposing them to truly terrifying survival scenarios would break their arrogant confidence and make them more respectful of galactic authority. The Academy had never had participants refuse to continue on the first day until humans started making contact with other species. The Academy staff had carefully studied human behavior and determined that their overconfidence came from living on an unusually safe and comfortable planet. They assumed that Earth must be a paradise world where humans never faced real danger. This would make the shock of genuine survival challenges even more effective. At teaching them humility, Velter had chosen these three specific humans because their files showed they were considered survival experts on their planet. He reasoned that if he could break the confidence of Earth's best survival specialists, it would send a clear message to the entire human species about their true place in the galactic hierarchy. The Academy had prepared special observation equipment to record human psychological breakdown for educational purposes. Other species would be able to study the recordings to understand how even the most arrogant species could be properly humbled through appropriate challenges. As the week passed, each of the three Koreans made their decision independently. Hyun saw it as the ultimate test of skills. He had spent his life developing Nari, viewed it as an unprecedented research opportunity. Tay considered it essential training for helping other humans survive in a dangerous galaxy. None of them showed the fear or hesitation that the Academy expected. Instead, they began preparing with the same calm professionalism they brought to dangerous situations on Earth. Hyun studied galactic maps and alien biology. Nari researched extreme environment adaptation techniques. Tay practiced meditation and physical conditioning. When all three sent their acceptance messages, the Academy staff was pleased but also slightly concerned. The humans seemed almost excited about facing challenges that had traumatized the galaxy's most experienced warriors. This unusual reaction was noted in their files but dismissed as typical human overconfidence that would be quickly corrected. The transport ship arrived exactly 1 week later, appearing in Earth orbit without warning. The sleek alien vessel was unlike anything humans had seen before, but the three Koreans boarded it with the same calm readiness they would show for any dangerous mission. As the ship left Earth orbit heading for the Academy space station, none of the humans realized they were about to completely change how the galaxy understood survival psychology and mental toughness. Their simple human approach to dealing with danger was about to challenge thousands of years of galactic civilization assumptions. The Academy staff waited eagerly for their arrival, confident that these primitive Deathworlders would finally learn proper respect for the civilized galaxy through carefully applied psychological pressure and impossible survival challenges. They had no idea that their ultimate test was about to become a learning experience about the difference between existing in safety and thriving in chaos.